Because deep down in Michael's soul and in Scott's soul, we absolutely love the whole lifestyle of being on the beach, riding waves, the sun, the warmth, the cold, the wind, the smells, the wax, the sand, the birds, the sea life, the freedom, the adventure, the spirituality, all of it, the physicality. We love it. It's deep down in our deepest core. My relationship to surfing is maturing. I guess I'm maturing in regards to my surfing. I used to be addicted to surfing, and it caused problems. I'm a spiritual being living a physical existence rather than how much personal instant gratification can I get right now.
That was the voice of Scott Bass, who is a returning guest in today's episode. We follow on from Scott and I's previous conversation about a month ago, where we started talking about one's relationship to surfing. So Scott and I delve into that quite deeply today. Before that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I just spent the weekend with Rob Case from Surf Paddling Technique, and it's such a good reminder on how important paddling is and how much room there is for improvement. So just urge you guys to jump on board to his level 1s. It's at surfingpaddling.com. Thanks, Rob. Also, Matt Griggs is holding a weekend retreat on the 9th, 10th and 11th of November. 3 days of mind, body and performance with Matt Griggs in the Sydney, Australia area. I get a lot of questions about surf coaches, recommendations for good ones, etc. I'll put a page on my website as a surf coach directory. So if you're listening and you're a surf coach, reach out. If you're a client of a good surf coach, reach out also. Mike at surfmastery.com. I'm living and working here in Malibu and hoping to surf some big waves this coming winter. So if you're in the LA area and you're planning on driving north to chase a swell, let me know. I just don't know anyone or where to go. Today's episode is an hour conversation with Scott Bass. Scott and I are just riffing on the concept of our relationships to surfing. Is surfing an addiction? Can it be a positive addiction? It'd be great if you, the listener, could weigh in on this, because I think it's a much bigger conversation than me and Scott just throwing around some ideas. So please send in some thoughtful emails, because I'd like to explore this concept more with other guests, and I would appreciate some listener input on this. Let's try and explore it together in depth. For now, let's have a listen to Scott and I scratching the surface. I got an idea I want to kind of discuss with you.
Yeah.
And it's off the back of what you and David have been talking about as well, and what we discussed last time, which is that sort of whole relationship to surfing. And surf mastery is not just mastery over a craft, but, mastery over your relationship with surfing.
Right.
And I think I mentioned to you on the phone last week I got this idea that life is about juggling and prioritizing multiple relationships. We could define a relationship first, and I've got it written here: the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. So obviously surfing can easily be defined as a relationship.
Yes.
It's kind of a three-way. It's got you, your equipment, and of course the ocean.
Right.
And to piggyback off what you and David questioned was how do you define yourself as a surfer, or how do we define a surfer?
Or do you want to define yourself as a surfer?
Let me weigh in on that, and it leads to what I want to talk about. Is it sort of, I think it's defined as if your relationship to surfing is in your top 5 relationships.
Oh, is that a question?
No, that's how I'm going to define whether you're a surfer or
that's
not.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. Why 5?
Could be 3, maybe 5. I don't know.
Maybe it should be 1.
Well,
If it's 1, then you are, and if it's not 1, then you aren't. I don't know. I'm just riffing with you.
we can break it down further. Is how much time do you spend surfing?
Well, let me ask you this: if you met a woman, and she's like, "I love you, and you love me. Let's get married, but we have to live in Idaho," would you marry that woman? Because knowing you wouldn't be able to surf anymore. And the answer is hell no. Therefore, surfing's more important than the relationship with the one that you love. And where do you go to school? Well, most surfers I know didn't go to Indiana University. They went, Surfer Magazine puts out a list of great colleges to go to if you're a surfer.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. Is if it's in your top 5 of relationships, you're going to have to manage, juggle, and prioritize your relationships. But surfing is one of them, and it's really important. And if, for example, this woman who lives in Idaho, if she can't understand that, then she might not be the right one for you.
Way to rationalize the hell out of that relationship. Sorry, honey. No, you're actually on to something. Like, that's true. If she doesn't know you well enough to know that you can't leave the coastline, then she's not the right one for you. But that, to me, means that surfing's the number 1 relationship. I think. I
don't know. Number 1, I'm not sure about number 1.
What if she understands that you need to be by the ocean, but she got this opportunity, great opportunity, whatever it is, maybe it's an academic, she's going to do some intern, whatever, some incredible business or educational opportunity. And she's like, honey, we got to go.
Of course it's manageable, right? Like if you were
it's not.
Well, it would be for example, if you were financially secure and you could travel, you could spend a week in Cabo every month, for example. Then living inland. Well, then that's.
You're making some assumptions. I guess I am too. Like if the woman that you love or the man that you love says, "I've got this incredible opportunity." And you realize as a partner in this relationship that this is an incredible opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You're going to get to study under Baron von whoever. Well, will you go with her to that place or him to that place so that she will benefit? Will you be selfless enough to do this?
I can relate to that question quite well, actually, because it was about 11, 12 years ago that my wife and I left. We weren't married at the time. We'd just recently met, and we left New Zealand, a nice coastal area of New Zealand, to live in London. And I spent 4 years in London where I surfed maybe 3 weeks out of the year. So it was just trips to Portugal and the odd trip to the coast out there. But at the time, I still considered myself a surfer because surfing still encompassed a lot of my thoughts. I still thought about surfing. When I went to the gym to keep fit and active, I was doing it to keep fit for surfing. I was swimming every week because I was a surfer. I was still reading in the surfing media, planning trips. So yeah, I did sacrifice some financial and career and relationship gains for living in London. But I always, there was surf trips were planned so that my time working was kind of managed and justified. And
so you're suggesting that you can still, that it's one of the top 5 relationships, even if you're not near the coast, if you're constantly sort of just focused on it, or maybe even worse than focused, like you're just obsessed
yes,
on it.
That's part of it.
So the obsession of the act or the obsession with the identity as a surfer is sort of where maybe that makes you a surfer then.
I don't know if identity is a good word. I guess
I don't like that one either.
Well, I got an example here.
But that's where we're starting from. Weren't we starting, if we went backwards, aren't we starting from how do you identify?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, here's another spin on it. It means that if you feel a very strong urge to drop everything else to surf a swell.
David, where are you?
Well, whether or not you can manage that urge is another thing, right? And that's actually what I want to talk about more. But like if you're someone who surfs and the swell's pumping and you decide to go you have free time and you decide to go mountain biking with your friends instead, probably your relationship with that friend and mountain biking is stronger than surfing, and it's probably not in your top 5. So you may surf on a weekly basis, but you're not necessarily a surfer because you're not prioritizing that relationship with the ocean when the ocean is calling.
I would agree with that. That's sort of where David and I got on down this rabbit hole, was that he was leaving waves as good as they're ever going to get at a certain spot.
Yeah, but I'm sure he felt the urge to stay, but
I don't think he did. I think he was perfectly fine with not. But I mean, I can't speak for him, but I have talked with him at length, as you know. And I think he was just like, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to get some waves up there, and I've got these other things I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
A listener sent me, I don't know if your listeners know what we're talking about, which is I'm concerned that we're not in context with them, that can, like they might not know what David and I were speaking of, or I got a listener email, and here it is. And it has to do with David leaving really good waves and not even caring about it. And the question is he a surfer? Is that what surfers do? I mean, how can you leave really, really good waves and not care about it? And this is what this listener wrote. He goes, the point for me is that you guys, Scott and David, didn't bring up is David's indignation about just driving away. David was like, yeah, the waves were pumping and I drove home, so what? As a grown man with a career and a family, I've missed a ton of epic swells, but there's been an underlying pain inside that eats away at me when I miss those days, and make sure to take every chance I get to take advantage when the opportunity presents itself to maximize my time in the water. If obligations got in the way of David surfing great waves in Baja, at least have some remorse and not be indignant about it. A couple of years ago, I drove away from an insane day up the coast with my family in my car, and I had no choice to surf. I couldn't do it. It ate away at me for a year, knowing I would be going back soon. I ordered the best board for that day and came back a year later, and it was flat. But the year after, the waves were epic, and I got to surf that board in those perfect waves. I didn't drive away going, oh, well. I drove away, and it killed me from the deepest, darkest depths of my being and kept me awake at night for months. That's the difference between a surfer and a part-time water slapper, which is like apparently what he's calling David.
I can certainly identify with that for sure. I think most surfers will, but there's another layer that goes to that. Is that it's kind of a little bit of an immature attitude to let, like, you're living in, like, if you miss a swell, as described, and you let that dwell, and you kind of remorse and regret, that's living in the past.
Yeah, it's a resentment.
Like, it's okay to feel that feeling because surfing is your chosen craft, etc. But to let it, take up time and space in your mind like that is that comes down to just managing your relationship with surfing. It's one thing to identify how strong your relationship with surfing is, and whether you're a surfer or a wave rider or a part-time surfer. But it's another thing.
Part-time surfer, is this a new classification you've come up with?
Well, that's the surfer that would, if it's pumping but his friends are going mountain biking, he's like, oh, he's going to go mountain biking. So he's a part-time surfer maybe.
Okay.
Surfing is one of his hobbies,
right,
per se. He owns a soft top, goes out every now and
then.
Oh
my God, yeah. Yeah, part-time surfer. Okay, we'll try to come up with a better phrase. It's confusing, but I think hobbyist is actually good.
Yeah.
He's a hobbyist surfer. It's one of his hobbies, but it's not ingrained in his life decisions.
Yeah.
He would be in Idaho.
Yeah. So I get what the person in that email is kind of saying, and it sounds like he's trying to say, well, because David didn't have this remorse,
right,
he's not a surfer.
Right.
But maybe David just deals with that remorse in a far better way.
I don't think David was remorseful. I think that David's in a place in his life where he's like, I'm good. I'll go up to Orange County and I'll surf Huntington Pier tomorrow, and it will satiate me.
Yeah, but that's such a
No, it's liberating.
yeah, it is.
I know. I agree.
Yeah,
On one side of it, I'm like, good for you, dude. I wish I could do that, or maybe I can do that, or maybe I'm moving towards that as I get older.
I think we all need to. And it was highlighted by another email that David read out to you on your last show, which is the Grommy who had you should have been here an hour ago, the tide was better, what are you guys doing, blah, blah, blah. And then that same person met the father and had the same attitude from the father, realizing where that attitude came from. And I think to have a 40 or 50-year-old man with that attitude is just, that's wrong, first of all, just being a surfer in the community, but to teach it to your kid is like...
That was almost a totally different thing, though. That was almost like, that was ego. That was like, son, this is the way you behave. You know, that was really about, I think that was an ego play, and I'm not sure I can describe it super good here, but anyway, I that was a good email, and it was horrible the way the guy behaved and the way his son behaved, and it was really a look at me, we're better than you. That's what that was about. It wasn't really about the waves. It was almost like, I've got more candy in my Halloween basket than you got. You should have been here an hour ago.
Yeah, but it also speaks to the surfers of the worst.
For sure.
Because surfing is bringing that out in him, and that's the state of his relationship to surfing.
But he's probably like that with everything, though. He's probably like that with his Halloween candy, and he's probably like that. Like, he's just an insecure man that needs and it manifests itself by him going, look at me.
Yeah. Agreed. And that's like, if we use the analogy of a romantic relationship, if you were to hold that same attitude that you might have had in your 20s, right? You meet someone, you're completely obsessed, you think about them all the time. Oh my God, she didn't text me back, blah, blah, blah. You might even be like quite obsessive and untruthful in that relationship just to get what you want. And when you're not with that person, you might be thinking about them too much. They might just kind of in a sense, you have an immature relationship with that person. Now, if you were to sort of continue to approach romantic relationships in that manner, as you get older, you're probably going to find you're not going to have any sort of long-term lasting relationships.
Yeah.
So by default and by out of necessity, we just learn to manage these relationships better, and we mature,
Yeah.
and we become more open with others and accepting of others.
Yeah.
And we find that when we're with them, we're with them. And when we're not with them, we're not obsessed by them. We certainly make time for them. We prioritize that relationship. We learn to manage that relationship a lot better. Why can't we do that with surfing?
Well, let me ask you this. So you have this wonderful girlfriend that you just talked about, and let's say you're with your bros, she's not around, you don't know that she's around, and all of a sudden you find out that she's going to be there within 3 or 4 hours, and she's going to be more gorgeous than ever. She's going to be made up, and she's just there just for you to be at your beck and call and to basically do anything you want. Would you drive away? Because that's what David did. He drove away from the girl. I mean, if we're using this analogy, right, that surfing is like a relationship, and the waves came, and he knew the waves were coming. He knew that his girlfriend was going to show up, and he just drove away and went, I guess I'll meet her tomorrow up in Orange County. The girl would be bummed.
Yeah.
But maybe we can't personify the surf.
Yeah, that gets into personifying the ocean. You're right.
Yeah.
But it does also hit on our ability to manage and prioritize, because we certainly can spend too much time with that person, and it will affect the relationships with your family and your friends, and of course the ocean.
Which is a whole nother. You know what's another interesting thing? Like, I when somebody goes, hey, let's go surfing together sometime, I just cringe. I just like, no. You know what? I don't have time for you. This isn't about you and me going surfing. This is about me going surfing. And I'm going to go down wherever I go, and I'm not going to call you and go meet me in the parking lot. I'm not going to, And it sounds very selfish on a surface level, right? But it kind of speaks to what you're talking about this is my relationship it's with surfing, and it's not our relationship with surfing. And then I've got friends who'll be like, "You never surf with us," blah blah blah. I'm like, I'm down there every single day. Just drive down there and paddle out. You'll probably see me. Like, don't hold it over me like I'm some bad guy or something. I hope I didn't just take your conversation down.
No. It's. Well, let me explain it to you this way, maybe. If we break life down into 7 areas: spiritual,
yes,
mental/creative, vocational, financial, family, social, and physical.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for most of us, surfing will fit into 3 or 4 of those categories. You might say it's spiritual. It's obviously it's a creative outlet, and a mentally it can be challenging at times. It's certainly physical, and then for some surfers, it's social as well. A lot of us, it's not. We just want to paddle out, catch a few waves, and not even look at anyone else. And I get that. We're trying.
For the record, I'm not saying that's what I do, but
No, of course. Yeah. But sometimes we want to do that, right?
Yeah, we want our time.
Yeah, we paddle down the beach and just catch a few runners quickly, or sometimes we sit out there and riff. So sometimes it's social, whether it's in the parking lot or in the lineup. But I certainly think it was more sociable when we were younger because we were surfing with friends.
Absolutely.
Now that we've got family is more important. And for some of us, surfing is going to fit into the family category because we go surfing with our kids or our partner. For some people, not many, you're earning money. So it's vocational and financial as well. Mm-hmm. But surfing for some people covers all 7 areas of parts of their life. Do you know what I mean? It's their job as well as their family, surf, etc. So they're justified in spending more time surfing than us.
Right.
If we spend too much time surfing, then the other parts of our 7 areas of life, especially with other people, they suffer. So it's about managing.
Yeah. I would agree with that. That makes tons of sense.
Managing the relationship and managing these areas of life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And surfing can be described as something else.
Let's hear it.
It can be described as an addiction, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, because an addiction defined here is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. And then some of the synonyms that go with that is dependency and habit.
Yeah.
So I think surfing definitely fits into this category. Again, it's another way to define a surfer. Are you addicted? Like, is it something you depend on?
Right.
And I certainly think that, like, to digress a little or sort of tangent a little bit, is that you could almost say that your relationship with a romantic partner or a friend is somewhat of a dependency, especially when you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like social interaction is just like put someone in solitary confinement, they go crazy, right? We need other people. It's important to thrive in life.
We're social animals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then I think it's okay to be addicted to surfing. It's okay to have it as if you've chosen it as your craft, it's okay to be a little bit dependent on that relationship because it can be a healthy addiction.
Yeah, that's interesting. I question whether there's such a thing as a healthy addiction, first of all.
Why do you question that?
Look at you going at the keyboard. Because it sounds like a paradox. Like, addiction has negative connotations. Is there any positive addiction? Because addiction basically means you are, you're shunning other parts of your life, those parts that you mentioned, whether it's relationships or work or family. You have no problem, or you're just blinded to the fact that you're ignoring those or not giving that as much attention as it deserves because you are addicted. Because you know what I mean? Like right now, an addicted surfer I could just take this thing off and go, dude, I'm out of here, and have no pangs of guilt about it because I'm so hyper focused on going surfing because I'm addicted. And it wouldn't be the right thing to do. You know what I mean? It would be the wrong thing to do. So I don't think that's a healthy addiction. I don't think there is such a thing as a healthy addiction. I'm not sure.
Well, we can agree that surfing is an addiction. Not for everyone. It can be.
Yeah.
But
And I think more often than not, it is. And I think there's certain like levels of that addiction.
I think the negative connotations around addiction is more of a modernized term of the word.
Give me a positive example.
Well, if you look at the etymology of the word addict, it's like devoted or habit, tendency, inclination, sacrifice, devotion. That's sort of the older meaning of the word. I think addiction is often we just think of substance, right? And that's the thing is when you're addicted to a substance, it's not only when you're on that substance when it's affecting your life. It's when you're off the substance, right?
Same with surfing.
Well, I think.
Dude, you were in England for 4 years and you were working out so that you could go do this thing. Like it was kind of.
Yeah, but.
Maybe that wasn't addictive behaviors, but I mean.
Well, for example, let's look at the extreme. Let's say you're addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
When you're not on heroin, you're not going to function normally, right? You're
generally looking.
It's going to mess with your hormones, your biochemistry, etc.
You're either on it or you're looking for it.
Exactly, right? And when you're a surfer, it can be like that, or you can, but it doesn't need to be. We can learn to manage it because it's not a substance that's physically changing our biochemistry. I mean, it is on some level because of it's a loved pursuit, but therefore it has the ability to be what's described as a positive addiction. And in fact, William Glasser wrote a book called Positive Addiction.
That guy's no good. Just kidding. I'm sure he's a wonderful.
He provides 6 criteria that must be fulfilled for a person to have a positive addiction to an activity.
Okay. I think I'm going to check all these boxes, but go ahead.
Well, it is something non-competitive that you choose to do and you can devote approximately an hour per day. Number 1. Number 2, it is possible for you to do it easily and it doesn't take a good deal of mental effort to do it well. Number 3, you can do it alone or rarely with others, but it does not depend on others to do it. 4, you believe that it has some value, physical, mental, or spiritual for you. 5, you believe that if you persist at it, you will improve, but this is completely subjective. You need to be the only one who measures the improvement. And, number 6, the activity must have the quality that you can do it without criticizing yourself. If you cannot accept yourself during this time, the activity will not be addicting.
Wow. That's interesting.
Isn't it?
Okay, so I guess there's positive addictions according to Mr. Glass.
Well, it's an interesting way to break it down. I think number 6 is a hard one for most surfers to...
Say 6 again, please.
The activity must have the quality that you can do it without criticizing yourself. If you can't accept yourself during this time, the activity will not be addicting.
Oh, okay. So they're basically saying, why would you want to do it if you're giving yourself a hard time about it all the time?
Kind of thing,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which almost describes a bad surf or a frustrating surf.
Right.
Which I think, as I grow older, I tend to have less and less of those.
You have less frustrating surfs?
Yes. Yeah. Just become more accepting of what
Not
they are.
old enough. How old are you now?
37.
Oh, shit. You're right in the prime, dude. Are you doing airs?
No.
What? I'm just giving you a hard time. I've never done an air in my life.
I don't really have a desire to
I don't either.
to do them.
Okay.
Surfing's done on the wave, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly.
But
right.
what are your thoughts on positive addiction?
Okay. I mean, I'm easily swayed. I'm not an expert in the field of psychology or, physiology or whatever it takes to be an expert in addiction or, but for me personally, addiction does have a negative connotation, and he can
Even after that?
Well, yeah, because because my thing with that is I don't know if addiction's the right word. That's just a positive life. Like I don't. I think he has described positive something. I'm not sure what it is, but it's not a positive addiction, because in my opinion, and that's all this is an opinion, an addiction causes problems in other parts of your life or for other people. You know?
So I guess positive addiction it's just a way to look at things. It's not necessarily a...
Well, what it is it's like, it's not a positive addiction. His definition is it's more like it's a positive, I don't know, help me out. What is it? How? It's a positive way of life. It's a positive lifestyle choice. Like what he's described as a positive lifestyle choice. There's no bad in what he describes. There's nothing negative happens. And with addiction, other people around you are destroyed or hurt in a real deep way. Any other addiction, except for this guy's version. So I think he's got the wrong word choice. Because an addiction is going to hurt somebody. At least every other addiction has, except for his.
Yeah. But, okay,
Because addictions are so self-centered that they inevitably hurt somebody.
But...
If you're doing something for an hour every day, and you're like, which is what he said, that's called going jogging. Like that's a positive lifestyle choice. Everyone around you benefits from it. You're healthier, you're happier, the friggin' serotonin's flowing, and you're going to live longer. You're probably going to be more effective at work and at life and around your relationships at home and family. And
exactly, and that's what surfing should be.
I agree, but it's not an addiction. It's a positive lifestyle choice.
Okay, good way to describe it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away...
I don't agree with positive addiction.
Okay, but that doesn't take away the fact that, like I think we always have the urge for surfing to be an addiction, something that can negatively affect others, right?
That's a pretty huge blanket generalization that we all have an urge for.
Not all of us. Surfers.
Surfers have an urge. Say it again.
Like if a swell comes,
right,
and your best friend's, or let's say a friend of your friend's kids having a birthday party you said you'd go to, you probably wouldn't even think twice about not turning up because the waves are pumping, right? So that is no. I'm generalizing, right? Therefore, you going surfing has negatively affected others, right? So let's say it's your best friend's kid, right? It's closer to a relationship. It's negatively affecting those people who expected you to be there. So therefore, it can be a negative addiction, right?
Yeah, it can definitely be negative. It can be an addiction. I agree. It just can't be a positive one. There's nothing positive about burning your best bro and his kid on his birthday.
No, but what I'm saying is the difference between it being, let's say, the difference between being an addiction and a positive lifestyle choice is our ability to manage that relationship with the ocean.
Yeah, I think it's a positive lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a positive addiction. At least right now. You can change my mind.
No, it's just another way to define it and talk about it, because
it's a positive lifestyle choice.
Yeah, it is. It can be.
But I don't think there's such a thing as a positive addiction. That's just a contradiction of terms. It's like jumbo shrimp, military intelligence.
Food for thought. I mean,
that's all it is. That's all we're doing, Mike, is just...
But that depends on how you identify
listener.
Addiction as well, or how you define it as well.
Yeah, and exactly. And I define it as, addiction hurts people around you.
Yeah.
It's so self-centered and so self-serving and so selfish that you don't care what it does to people around you because you're going after it.
Yeah, and that describes a lot of surfers.
I agree, but it's not a positive thing.
Not at all.
Yeah, so I don't agree with positive addiction. I would say that surfers have addictive traits, and it's not always a good thing. at least for the people around him,
Yeah. I think I asked you this last time, but I'll ask it again, is how's your relationship to surfing?
My relationship to surfing is maturing, like I guess I'm maturing in regards to my surfing. I used to be addicted to surfing, and it caused problems with this family and with work. And it still kind of causes some problems. It can cause some problems. I have no problem procrastinating work for a surf. And then that time comes when there's a lot of work built up and you don't feel good about yourself. You feel like maybe you made the wrong choice or you know. And surfing, my wife will tell you I've gone on more trips with my friend Pat than I have with my wife because Pat's my surf buddy and we plan these surf trips, And I'll rationalize, I'll give her the old, honey, that's who you married. I wasn't going to go to Idaho with you, And then she'll be like, just, look at the calendar, you know. And then, I'll be like, you wouldn't want to go on a boat to Indo anyway. You'd be miserable, And but it's not about that. It's about the amount of time that I'm spending with my wife, And so that's changed, And it's the good news is that it's changed, and it doesn't affect me negatively. Like I'm able to go, you know what, you're right, and I'm okay, and I love spending time with her, and it's fun to go wherever that's not a surf related trip and do stuff. And in the past, that might not have been the case. It might have been way more about, I think surfers are really, really paranoid about their time, their free time. Like my whole thing was, okay, look, if I've got to be at work from 9 to 5, all the rest of the time that's cut out around that, the first and foremost thing that time focuses on are the waves going to be good? Or can I go surfing then? Or I am going to go surfing then. I'm just saying, that time around, that 9 to 5 clock is mine to do whatever I want, and so are weekends. So is my vacation time. And do not mess with it. Super selfish, self-centered. But I was, hyper focused on doing what I love, which is surfing.
Why did that change?
I think having kids, I think realizing how selfish it is, realizing that being on this planet isn't really about me, me, me. It's kind of about us, or, it's probably changed mostly because of just prayer and meditation and trying to realizing that I'm a spiritual being inside of a physical body rather than a physical body. I'm a spiritual being living a physical existence rather than how much personal instant gratification can I get right now, and I'm going to get as much of it as I can and as long as I can, because that's what life's all about, being a pig, personal instant gratification. And so that was a big part of my life for a long time. And in the last, maybe 15 years, it's evolved as my kids started to get older, and it's just, it took me a little longer to become, to start to evolve to a higher place, not higher like better than, but just higher than. That selfish behavior is just that. That's not how my God wants me to live my life. So it gets into some spiritual dogma that I don't want to bore your listeners with.
Yeah, but it comes back. You learnt to manage your relationship with surfing better.
I think that, yeah, for sure. I made choices. But the important thing is that I made the choices and I was okay with it. In the past, if I had to make those choices, I'd be like, damn, I got to go to the birthday party. waves. It's my only time, even though I have a lot of other time. I could rationalize the crap out of my free time. I think free time is a real, I think for addictive personalities that have sort of glommed onto surfing as their addiction, free time is like a big deal, because I've got to go to school and I've got to work. And so I've only got 3 hours and there's 3 hours of daylight left. And guess what I'm doing? And do not even think about messing with it.
If you're juggling a bunch of relationships and you're prioritizing them, then each of those relationships, you can kind of define yourself with, for example, your relationship with the ocean. If that's what you think about the most and you spend as much of your free time doing, then I think surfer would be an apt description of your identity. But you can still be hear me out, because you can still be a surfer when you're, but you can also, but at the top of your identity labels might be father and husband, and then surfer's third. But when we were younger, surfer was the top one.
Absolutely, yes.
But just because surfer's not the top one doesn't mean we're not surfers.
I agree with that.
It just means that we're learning to manage our relationships better.
Absolutely.
And be better, I think, just to be better people.
Absolutely. And the reason that I scrunched my face up is that, and it's different for you probably, but because you're from New Zealand. But here in California, the way pop culture has identified being a surfer, like so Spicoli, smoking weed, and maybe some of them rightly so, by the way. Some of these characterizations or stereotypes have some truth to them. Skipping work, like being irresponsible. All of these things that's what it is to be a surfer. Now in New Zealand, it might be riding waves is what it means to be a surfer in the general population's eyes. They're like, what a good bloke, he's a surfer. Sorry for the Kiwi, or for the butchering of the accent, but, whereas here it's like, oh, he's a surfer, which is like, count on him not to be at work on time, count on him to be kind of unintelligent, count on him to be a pot smoker, count on him to, just be a ne'er-do-well. And so to identify as that, which is what David and I were getting at. Like, I'd almost rather be called a wave rider or just, a lover of the ocean. Like when people today go, oh, you're a surfer, I kind of go, I like to get in the ocean, which is kind of my internal polite way of saying I don't really like to be characterized as that because of some of the negative connotations that I'm putting on it. I'm not saying that
No, I agree with you.
I'm not saying that the population is, but my perception is that the population is. And a lot of times by the tone of their voice, you can tell.
Well, I think you're right, but I also think that perception is for the general public and the surfer that doesn't manage their surfing relationship well. If you've got a friend, for example, if you have a friend who you respect them as a surfer and as a human, and they manage their relationship to surfing well, if they say you're not a surfer, you're going to kind of feel the opposite. Like, hold on.
No, I don't.
No?
I personally don't care because I know that's not the case. Like my ego will go, okay, if you say so. I don't really care what you think, quite frankly. You know what I mean? Like, I would actually say thank you. You're right. I'm a wave rider. I enjoy the ocean. I was out there this morning, and I'm going to be out there tomorrow morning. And you can think what you want.
But what were you out there doing?
Riding waves.
Yeah, okay, that's semantics. But
It is. I'm just toying around, but
like part of you identifies as a surfer, right?
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I couldn't relinquish that, even if I wanted to. I've been in the surf industry for 20-something years, 30-something years, since 40 years. So, and of course, I'm in it now, and that's my business, is the surf industry, but on an intellectual level, I like to delve into what we're talking about. This is a conversation that you're not going to have with, down in the parking lot. So, I mean, you might, but my point is that I guess the question, it's like, am I embarrassed? You know? And and I think it depends on the context, and it depends on who's asking the question. And it
It
depends on.
does. Yeah.
I mean, look at it this way: if you were going into a job interview and they went, "Oh, I see here you're a surfer," you'd be like, "Oh, fuck! They must have looked at my Facebook page." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if you were going to meet your fiance's father, and he's like, "So, see, you spent a lot of time at the beach." You'd be like, "Oh, shoot." You know what I mean? Whereas if he went, "Oh, I see here you went to Harvard in New Zealand," you'd be like, "Yeah, let me tell you about it." You know what I mean? And so it all depends on context, because deep down in Michael's soul and in Scott's soul, we absolutely love the whole lifestyle of being on the beach, riding waves, the sun, the warmth, the cold, the wind, the smells, the wax, the sand, the birds, the sea life, the freedom, the adventure, the spirituality, all of it, the physicality. We love it. It's deep down in our deepest core, and we give thanks for it. We're blessed to be able to do it. I mean, there's people marching up from Honduras right now that are trying to find out what to eat next. And so all of those things, I absolutely wave the flag, and but I don't necessarily wave the Spicoli flag, or like. So when somebody says, "So, being a surfer is in your top 5, or it's the third thing that's most important to you when you self-identify," I kind of cringe at. I wish we could recategorize those things I just mentioned to you. What is that called? And sadly, I guess it's called a surfer. Maybe it's not sad, but it depends on the context of when somebody's identifying you as a surfer.
But that also sounds like it's only like that because of how surfing is perceived
Yes.
in modern culture.
Exactly. And it might be different. In fact, I know I think it's different in Europe. I think in Europe it's like, I don't think it's quite as a negative connotation. I think, but I don't know. But
Has surfing lost its cool?
surfing lost its cool in 1957, I think it was, when Gidget the movie came out. That's right there. That's the end of cool. It was really cool before anyone knew about it. In like 1943, when guys were coming back from World War II and riding up and down this coast with no one around, and when they saw another guy with a surfboard, they went, "Hey, come over here. The waves are good." Surfing lost its cool the very first time somebody said, "Oh shit, don't let that guy get over here." That's when surfing became uncool. And that happened probably right around 1949 or 52 or something. But for sure, as soon as Gidget came out, surfing was no longer cool. It was the beginning of surfers are the worst. Selfish, self-centered dickheads.
Yeah.
And that's not how you and I want to be
No.
identified.
Agreed. To go back to your relationship with surfing, was there a point where surfing, the time you were spending surfing, started to be a little guilt-ridden?
That happens now more than it ever has, especially on long surf trips, where you're like, "Oh man, this is day 10. I haven't even called my wife." It's not cool. And but in the past, it wasn't like that. Like there's just been a real revelation in the past 15 years. Like when I'm about your age, like you're 37, right? When I was about 35, I was maybe more like 40 or maybe 45. My wife might even tell you just a couple of years ago. But and frankly, it's owed to a couple of things. One is just getting older. Like I can only surf so much now. Back in the day, I was good for 2 or 3 sessions a day, And 2 is this spiritual quest that I think we're all on, whether we realize it or not, to understand why we're here. why we're on this planet. And I think once any of us start to identify with that question, and we start to explore it, and through the exploring of that, we find that it's not really about us, it's about other. What's amazing, it's a paradox, because what happens, at least with me, is that you find out, oh, you know what? It's really about being of service to your fellow man. That's why we're here. And oh my God, I actually get joy from this. The idea of giving a wave to somebody is actually making me feel pretty good. That's really weird. Or being of service, however it is, like doing the dishes for my wife, or you washing your wife's car without her knowing. And once you start to go down this path of being of service to your fellow man, an unselfish act, what I've noticed is that all this stuff that I was really worried about losing, holding on to it, squeezing it, don't take my free time, motherfucker. Once I let go of that, it all came back. I've got as much free time as I've ever wanted, and I don't even need to use it. So I hate to sound too...
No, you're on the money.
Too, like Jimmy Swaggart or one of these televangelists, but...
You're on the money, but let me bring it back to
yes,
to
please,
surfing.
please. I so apologize to your listeners.
This is good, because, that's... You have to be philosophical. Otherwise, you can't manage relationships. If there's no bigger reason to manage a relationship, you're not going to. But it's interesting to hear you say that you're feeling more guilt for surfing, whereas I'm at a place at the moment where I'm learning to feel less. Because in the past it's been like, if I'm not surfing, I feel like all these unridden waves, like it's consuming my mind.
Yeah.
And then when I do go surfing, I'm feeling, oh shit, I got all these other things to do.
Yeah.
So it's like the opposite things were consuming my mind. But if I learn to manage my relationship with surfing and be honest and open to it with my other relationships, then I can go surfing without guilt, and then I can spend time with my other relationships without thinking about surfing.
Well, that's well put, and I'll just recharacterize. I'm not guilty when I go surfing, but there's times when if I'm on a surf trip where it's like, okay, you know what? 9 days of this is kind of like not fair to my wife or to my work or to whatever, like that's where there's some guilt, usually when it's like a long surf trip.
Yeah.
My wife will tell you, I don't have any guilt about going surfing today or right now, unless there's a prior engagement that we have that I'd be stepping on, which would be wrong, So.
Okay, so you have learnt to manage.
Oh, for sure.
But what my original question was back then was there a time in your life where that guilt started to creep in more and more, and is that what sort of taught you to have a better relationship with surfing?
I'm sure there was, I'm sure there was. It's weird because I'm in sort of a unique position where I can manage my time. I have more. My schedule's not as set in stone as some people's are. So managing this addiction has been easier for me than for some, I would think. It's funny, I think when you do have a real set schedule, like you have to be at work or you have to do this, you have to do that, and you only have this little bit of free time on the outskirts of that main thrust of your life, which would be work or school or whatever, there's absolutely no guilt about using that time to go surfing. Because it's like, dude, I just did 8 hours, whatever it is I do. And now, guess what? It's time for some Scott time. It's time for some Mike time, There's definitely no guilt. So it's funny because when you do have when you're self-employed and you can kind of manage your time, it's easier to get guilty about it because you're like, oh shit, I've taken this 4-hour session is 2 hours too long. It should have been a 2-hour session, So.